in the eastern side of the city, both in a combat way, and we're told now in an engaging sort of contact with the civilian population at the moment. John Berman, who has been traveling with the Marines for this entire campaign, is farther to the south in a place called Numania. And John, there you are largely engaged in a peacekeeping operation already. Am I right?
That was the excuse for the Pentagon and the United States to go into Iraq. It was because Iraq possessed weapons. President Bush told us over and over again they are a threat to the United States and its allies if this regime is not toppled. Now that the regime appears to be teetering on the edge, people are going to be wanting to see that evidence. Where are those weapons? And you've got to believe that a lot of the U.S. military forces right now are scrambling through the Iraqi countryside, trying to find those weapons, those chemical factories, those biological factories, something they can hold up to the cameras and say, this is why we went in and did what we did.
Mark, is there any way to even speculate at this point? We haven't seen any use of chemical weapons or any weapons of mass destruction, whether that might be used at this point?
You know, the fear would be that there would be some rogue officers in Saddam's Republican Guard who might, out of anger and spite, realizing that they are gone down, might somehow fire those weapons in essentially a suicidal mass murder. That would be the concern at this point. Certainly as a tactical advantage, the Iraqis can no longer believe that firing chemical weapons will make the Americans withdraw from their mission. So I don't...
Once they occupy this massive city, that there may still be a fight left in the rest of Iraq.
Appreciate it, General Newbold. Let's go to the White House now, where ABC's Terry Moran is standing outside the White House in the rain, which is already a contrast to what's happening in downtown Baghdad. Terry, are they trying to dampen down expectations of it at the White House as well?
Some, Peter. There's no question that there is a word of caution in the air. But the bottom line is these extraordinary pictures, these thrilling pictures, come as vindication to a lot of people here, including the president. Everyone in the West Wing just riveted to their television sets right now. Top officials, secretaries, people in the press room watching these pictures. We're told the president himself obviously has been briefed on this and is also in a National Security Council meeting right now where these pictures are playing. And according to a senior administration official who spoke with the president this morning, the president's reaction was the following. He says, freedom's taste is unquenchable. This is a historic moment. He says that these pictures are a powerful testament to mankind's desire to be free. That includes the Iraqi people, as the president always said it would, according to this official. But there is that note of caution in the air, that there is work, hard work ahead, that the American people need to be prepared for more fighting, and that these pictures represent only one part, an amazing part in many ways, but of the total picture of what's going on in Iraq. But the sense here is one of, yes, caution, but profound vindication.
Thanks, Terry Moran, very much. I think everybody in the country has known over the last couple of weeks anyway that it was only a matter of time before the U.S. would prevail. It was clear from the very beginning of the campaign that the Iraqis were no military match for the United States. One of the things we perhaps have not examined closely enough in the last several days has been the effect of American air power. We saw it, of course, in the first Gulf War. We've seen it in Afghanistan. And now, though we haven't seen as much of it in this campaign because there have not been embedded reporters, among other things, and camera teams flying over the skies of Iraq, but you get glimpses every day of the extraordinary damage which has been done by the air, both to the Iraqi army and to the symbols of and components of the regime of Saddam Hussein.
Otros resultados que no un ataque militar. Los militares estadounidenses dispararon un misil a televisión de Abu Dhabi y Al Jazeera.
Convirtiéndose en la vía para cerrar estas heridas. Una cuestión que ha sido muy criticada, que se ha señalado aquí como alimentos como arma o alimentos como este argumento que vendría después de las acciones bélicas.
Burn them out of villages and push them up into the north of Iraq. They have been here for a dozen years, protected by the U.S. and British no-fly zone. And today they feel that they are closer to being freedom and getting into some of the areas that they were kicked out of in Iraq. This is a city of several 100,000. We've seen tens of thousands of people on the street. Just to paint the picture, earlier I happened to be in the office with a couple of government officials when some of this footage in Baghdad started appearing on satellite television here in the north. They were
Preston, I'm going to interrupt you for just a
official...
second, because this picture we're showing you, we believe, is a building that's on fire in Baghdad. We don't have much information about it. Yeah, it's from one of our cameras that's on top of the Palestine Hotel that I believe is shooting in the same area, but it's some distance away, clearly, and this building on fire. Maybe, we're going to talk to Rick Francona a little later, and he might have... Jack, you don't have any idea what this building is, do you?
Well, it vaguely looks like something at Baghdad University, which is not that far away from the Palestine Hotel, and at which there were some significant Iraqi forces opposing the 3rd Infantry Division's attempted move across the Tigris River yesterday, but that building looks awfully familiar, and it may very well be part of Baghdad University.
Here. That is,
okay,
yes.
Okay, now we're back.
Now you get the orientation.
Okay, that would have been further out to the east of Baghdad.
The Marine unit that we're embedded with, they came through a grove, a huge grove, almost a forest of palm trees, and there they came under attack and under fire. As they suppressed that and began to investigate, they found a huge stash of artillery pieces, anti-aircraft guns, and other various forms of ammunition and hardware. And so the Marines quickly went about the job of destroying it. This is sort of demolition that is done on the fly here. The Marines are obviously still trying to push forward through their objectives. So this is not something carefully planned and drawn out as you might do with a specific demolition team. Instead, it is Marines going through the underbrush there, quickly locating the Iraqi artillery, and then using either hand grenades or incendiary grenades, lobbing them into place there, and then running out of the way.
The coalition forces here say that pretty much they're in control, and Basra is now locked down. The big problem, of course, is not from soldiers, but from the locals, who tend to vent their anger on the old regime by going out, they're looting, they're torching establishment buildings, and that has been a real problem for the local forces here, the coalition forces, to try and get a handle on. One of the Marines commanders here said to me, the problem is we're equipped for war fighting, we're not equipped to police the area, so we're hoping that they just get on with it. After 24, 36 hours, they come.
I think one thing that people don't realize about these airplanes is you fly by yourself in this small area. You're the navigator and you're the pilot, right?
Yeah, that's true. We're flying by ourselves, and I actually like it that way because it gives me the opportunity to be in control of the jet, not have somebody second-guessing the things that I'm doing, and I like that aspect of flying this jet.
To actually drop the bomber missile, what do you press?
First, you'll select the master arm switch, like you said, and then you'll press what we call the pickle button right here.
So that's the button you press to drop the munitions?
Yes.
Do you ever feel any pressure when it comes to that point where you have to drop the bomber missile?
No, I would say I have definitely adrenaline pumping, definitely kind of like, you know, getting ready for athletic competition. You just have that anticipation of making sure that you've taken all the correct steps, that you're dropping on the right coordinates, that you're dropping on the right thing.
Right, then they might as well help them with this little thing here.
Chris, it looks right now, after hearing a little bit of gunfire there, it looks as though people are scattering a little bit. Is that just more of people scattering away from the statue as they anticipate its fall, or are they reacting to gunfire?
Most of them, this is the reaction to gunfire, just like I took a bit of cover here. There's not a whole lot of cover to speak for in the middle of this square. And it is not quite clear who shot, but apparently it was nothing to really get excited about because it didn't faze one single Marine in the square here. They're just pretty much at ease and look very much in control of the whole area.
Indeed, it looks as though not only the Marines and the Army, but the people there, they don't appear to be gun shy at this point. They appear to have assurance that U.S. troops have things under control, no?
I would think so, but obviously there are here and there are little pockets where there might be a hard-hearted believer, you know, who's still hanging in there, and then who may want to take the odd off at the Marine or so.
Sure, they no doubt don't want to take anything for granted. They've come so far to reach this day. Chris, if we can, as we watch these troops apparently try to figure out where that shooting came from, if we can go back to the picture of the statue again, and if you can just set the scene for us once again, where are they in the process of getting this thing to come down?
There's heavy discussion going on here about what exactly is going to be used, either a rope or a chain. And I see that part of the crew of this M88 is climbing about and releasing all kinds of things I assume are for this purpose of towing something that is pretty sturdy. I see. This is how it's going to go. I see something being lifted up that resembles a crane. And I think it's not just going to be pulled by the vehicle itself. I think there's a brand new approach here to solving this problem.
Now, Chris, it appears that as we speak and as we've been covering this, as you're looking at Marines focusing their aim on the source of that fire, again, our own Chris Yumbelt is on the scene right there in Paradise Square, and apparently those shots were not that much of a concern, at least to the people in the square. Chris, I want to tell you that the building that we saw on fire a few moments ago, and you could perhaps help us on this, apparently was the Ministry of Finance. Can you tell us more about that building?
Well, as many other government buildings in this country, it may have been more than just the Ministry of Finance. There is the Air Force Sporting Club, for instance, which was the scene of a short battle this morning because apparently there was some sporting fedayeen or something else in there giving the Marines some resistance, but apparently that's not taken care of.
By the way,
yes?
No, we hear a lot about the Marines, and I'm sure you're seeing a lot of Marines there. We don't want to leave the Army out of it. The 3rd ID, the 3rd Infantry Division, is part of the force that's in there, and of course all of this could not have happened without U.S. air power. I just wanted to give a plug to our other services as well as the Brits who've done such an incredible job down in the South. So go ahead, Chris.
No harm intended here, sorry. Yeah, I can see that the soldiers are now standing on top of some APCs in reaction to the shots that we all heard, and they're looking with binoculars, scanning an area behind some palm trees where there's a construction site, in fact, which might possibly be a hideout for snipers or something. But as far as I can tell, nobody's moving into that direction. They're just screening the area so far with binoculars.
Let's go back to Britt Hume in Washington, D.C. Britt, you were able to shed some light earlier on just what kind of a tank retriever this is. What's going on with the crane now?
Well, Bridget, this is one of the capabilities that this M88 has. I've seen pictures of an M88 with the crane attachment raised just as you're seeing there, lifting up a tank. So you get an idea of the power that's available on this vehicle, and you can sense here that they're putting that into play now, trying to effectively take this statue down. This is going to be fascinating to watch as this tank is being put to use in a way that nobody probably ever thought of, but for which it appears to have all the potency it needs.
And Britt, you know, we've heard a lot about joint operations in this particular battle in our war on terror.
We know it this time. Oh, here we go. The American flag. There we go.
I wonder if we can listen to what the sound in that square is.
Sorry, I can only offer the little microphone in my telephone here, but it may give you an impression. So Saddam Hussein is now head under his feet, the Star-Spangled Banner. That's all he's going to see from now on.
All right, Britt Hume in Washington, D.C., and Chris Yumbelt in Baghdad. Stand by, if you will. Let's go back to Doha, Qatar, and John Scott is there. John.
Well, Bridget, I just wanted to impart a little bit of my construction knowledge from high school. What they may be hoping to do here is to use the power and that strength of that M88 tank device to perhaps jostle the statue enough, snap the moorings, dislodge the foundation enough that then the horsepower, the people power of the Iraqis themselves is going to be sufficient to bring it down the way they wanted originally when they first threw that line up around the statue. For obvious reasons, I suppose our military would prefer the symbolism of seeing the Iraqis bring that statue down themselves. They just don't have the muscle to do it. So as you saw that guy wailing away at the statue's base with a sledgehammer, he had the right idea. If he can only dislodge the moorings, somehow snap the bolts that are holding it to the concrete foundation, it's going to come over. So if they could use the strength of that tank and the attached crane to get that job done, then it'll be simple work for the Iraqis to do the rest of it themselves. Bridget?
Yeah, and John, interesting, just as you were speaking, the American flag taken off the head of the Saddam Hussein statue.
But look who's holding it now. It's no longer a U.S. soldier. It's an Iraqi citizen waving the U.S. flag. That might do something to dispel criticism, no doubt. We are about to hear from with regard to the Al Jazeera stations, et cetera. Is Britt Hume still with us?
I am, David.
Britt, what about that? I mean, you can understand these Marines who have put their lives on the line, sweated with blood and guts for the past 3 weeks, wanting to show the stars and stripes in this moment of glory. Understandable, but no doubt Al Jazeera and the others are going to make hay with that.
Well, perhaps, David, one senses that after that flag was put over the head of Saddam Hussein, that somebody, some commanding officer may have said, hey, get that thing down, because U.S. officials have been very sensitive about the idea that this was liberation, not conquest, and the hoisting of the American flag over territory that is captured and taken, so to speak, is not the image they want. They want the image of liberation. As you can see, the flag is being stowed at the moment by that Marine up there as they prepare to give this thing a good yank, if that's what they're going to do.
Chris Yumfeld, are you still with us, Chris?
I'm here. I think that caller he just got is going to do the job, I guess. In the meantime, I may want to tell you that following the tanks that rolled in here. Okay. Somebody's holding up the Iraqi flag now, standing on the M88, and being cheered. So this is a proud nation. And what you just said about the liberation and not being conquering this, but liberating these people, this is exactly what is happening here. And I believe that looking at this picture, this is how they understand it. There's room for the Iraqi flag and also the American flag right next to it.
Maybe
I just wanted to tell you.
Yeah. I was just going to say, maybe that's a shot that we may not be seeing from Al Jazeera, but along with the U.S. flag, the Iraqi flag being held up. Chris, I heard some applause. Can we just listen for a second to the natural sound there?
Certainly.
All right, we're having a little difficulty. Perhaps you could be our translator there, Chris. What are they saying?
I need to find somebody who can translate this for me. I have to get a little bit closer. Hang on.
Building and maintaining of order and reconstruction of the new Iraq, well, that hasn't happened, and there is a vacuum, and the question is who fills that vacuum. And we've seen in other areas, in other countries that we've been in these kinds of situations, where unless there is a quick attempt to fill that vacuum, there can be a period of law and disorder, basically lawlessness and disorder, and the people don't want that.
Well, it is clear that these Marines. Sorry, Christiane, it's clear these Marines got the message about the sensitivities at play here. Now we see one of these pre-Gulf War Iraqi flags being draped around the neck of Saddam Hussein. It was just for a small period of time that we saw that American flag on Saddam Hussein's head. Barbara Starr has some breaking news out of the Pentagon. Barbara, we're going to keep our eye on this picture, but what do you have?
Well, I don't know if it's breaking news, Paula, but I can tell you when that American flag went up, there was an almost audible gasp in some Pentagon offices here. This was not the picture the Pentagon wanted to see. Christiane is right. Often in wartime, soldiers do undertake these signs of celebration when they believe they've achieved.
Booby-trapped by Saddam Hussein, realizing that if his regime fell, this scene might play itself out. Is there any concern there that such a thing has happened?
Continue some sort of aerial action, aerial attack against these pockets of resistance, but they're becoming so small, so spread out throughout Baghdad, it's going to be very tough, and they're going to have to be tracked down on the ground. The pockets of resistance are a concern, and the other concern that we're hearing about this morning is indeed in the north. They feel that there is still substantial resistance in the town of Tikrit in the north, the ancestral homeland of Saddam Hussein, and they think that is still a situation they are going to have to deal with. Paula?
And we're going to break away from you to catch up with Simon Robinson, who is standing by in the square where it looks like this statue is ready to go. Simon?
The Marines have attached a chain around the neck of Saddam and are now reversing this large tank away from the statue, and looks like it's about to go, as you said. When the American flag went up, there were no boos, but not many cheers either. And then the pre-Kuwait War, pre-Gulf War Iraqi flag was brought out, and there were cheers, a lot of clapping, cries. Of course, the Iraqi flag changed after the Gulf War. Saddam added a religious message in the middle of the flag, and the flag that was put up there was the old Iraqi flag, the flag, I guess, that older Iraqis remember from the days before Saddam. This tank now is reversing through a crowd of a few hundred people, perhaps 1,000 people, reversing away from the statue. I'm not sure how far back it has to get before the statue will start toppling. It's late afternoon in Iraq. Next to, on the other side of the square, I can see there's a large mosque. There's a large hotel behind me, and all around Iraqi families out watching this momentous day in Baghdad and its history.
Simon, as we watch this, I wanted to ask you a question about whether you were aware of any kind of command that went out to these Marines to bring that American flag down, because there is so much sensitivity about perhaps this being seen as a sign of occupation, not liberation.
I'm not sure in this instance, but I do know that through the campaign, Marines have been told to take flags off vehicles. They weren't allowed to fly the flags from tanks or armored personnel carriers or anything like that. That was definitely a directive. And I know in the case of the battalion that I was traveling with, the colonel often made a point of telling his troops, if you score a try, if you score a touchdown in a football match, just act as if you've done it before. Walk back to the halfway line and get ready for the next play. There's not to be any cheering. There's no sense of triumphalism. He often tells his troops, act as if you've been to the barbecue before. Don't act as if it's your first barbecue. In other words, don't get too excited. Just act as if it's something you've done before, even if you happen to be 19 years old and perhaps on your first overseas trip, which is to Iraq. So there's definitely been directives from above not to be too triumphal about this whole thing.
So you were saying when the American flag went up for that very short period of time, there were no boos, but there was no cheering either. But it wasn't until the Iraqi flag was wrapped around the neck of Saddam that there was real cheering going on.
Exactly. And they're now tightening. The statue's starting to topple. It's coming forward. They're winding in the chain. They're not moving the vehicle back. They're just bringing it in rather like a tow truck. And in fact, the right leg is snapped. The left leg is going. There's pieces of debris coming off the statue. And now it falls. A cheer goes around the square. People are waving their hands. And the statue, the hollow statue of Saddam is left dangling from this marble plinth. People now throwing objects at it, throwing rocks and pieces of wood. They can find throwing dirt up into his face.
Does it look like that tow truck vehicle will try to move back so the Saddam is not left in this dangling position and be taken to the ground?
It is moving very slightly, and they're again tightening that. It's almost that they will seemingly pull it off the pedestal completely. They're clearing people away, and now it's come off completely and falls to the ground. More cheers go up, and people are now on the statue of Saddam, dancing up and down. People are rushing to the square to in fact jump on the statue of Saddam. Mostly there are men in there. The women and children seem to be standing back. I see families though getting closer, someone holding a child up to see the scene. And people are bouncing up and down on this hollow statue of Saddam.
Simon, if you would, could you hold your phone away from your mouth and maybe we can hear some of the ambient sound coming from the crowd?
I will. I'll walk closer to the scene and I'll hold the phone up. I'm now nearly at the scene. The sound of the tank might drown out some of the cheers, but I'll hold the phone up. That was the sound of Iraqis cheering and jumping on that statue.
Can you give us an idea, Simon, how many more people have arrived now that the statue's down? I think you said at one point you thought that maybe there were 1,000 people in the square?
I'd say there'd be 1,500 people now, and as I'm up near where the statue was, I can look down the street and there's a lot of vehicles arriving from the southeastern direction, which is, of course, the direction that the Marines arrived from today. So it's an area that's being cleared, that's relatively safe. And more people arriving all the time. This square is really starting to fill up.
And a lot of symbolism at play here. You were saying that this is the pre-Gulf War flag now that is attached, or at least they're attempting to attach to the base of what used to be a statue of Saddam Hussein. And I guess the one thing that is missing from this is what was added after the Gulf War, which was a religious statement saying God is great.
Slapping the statue with anything they can grab hold of, and particularly, and I mentioned this before, their shoes. There is symbolism, is there not, in the Arab world of using your feet or your shoes to degrade, desecrate something?
You do, and it's almost as bad as comparing somebody to a dog, I guess. Yes, this is as low as it gets.
Chris, before
and people are jumping up and down on this statue and hitting it hard and stamping on it. Yes, indeed.
Chris, again, before this statue came down, had you had the opportunity to talk to Iraqis about what this first taste of freedom has felt like for them? It has to be just
moments ago.
Saddam Hussein hat immer wieder Angriffe abgegeben. Und hat die Strukturen, die da waren, das ist der moderne Struktur in diesem Land. Die hat ja zum Schluss nicht mehr genutzt.
And now they were able to climb on top of this symbol of Saddam Hussein's power, this entire city built in many ways by Saddam Hussein as a monument to Saddam Hussein.
We're just getting this word in. There was a hearing in progress on Homeland Security on Capitol Hill, and U.S. Senator Gordon Smith of Oregon said he was late in arriving for that hearing because he was watching the TV coverage of Baghdad, and he said, quote, "I'm just glad we have a commander-in-chief who didn't listen to Hollywood or the New York Times or the French." And he said while some had warned that the Iraq War would create hundreds of new bin Ladens, it has instead created thousands of freedom fighters. This from Senator Gordon Smith of Oregon. We're likely to hear lawmakers on Capitol Hill talking a great deal about this.
These pictures are being broadcast, the ones that we're looking at, in the Arab world as well. Let's hear more about that from John Scott in Doha in Qatar. John.
Yeah, Bridget, I just wanted to say, you know, I don't speak Arabic and I can't tell you exactly how the war has been covered here, but just watching Al Jazeera and some of the other Arab feeds that we're able to catch here in Doha, Qatar, it's been clear that their standpoint has been very sort of anti-U.S. They've carried a lot of coverage, a lot of pictures of civilian victims of the war, and the pictures are very powerful and in some cases quite grotesque. Now, the fact that these pictures that we're watching now are also being carried by Al Jazeera, beamed throughout the Middle East, beamed into countries like Jordan, which has been boiling up with anger over what many in that country perceived as sort of U.S. heavy-handedness. The fact that U.S. Marines and U.S. military people, coalition personnel, the British in Basra, that all of those folks are being portrayed as liberators, as helping the Iraqi people to throw off the yoke of Saddam Hussein. Those pictures are going to be, well, I think life-changing, or perception-changing at least, for an awful lot of people in this part of the world.
It actually shows a picture of itself within the screen, so it's hard to get a picture of what they're watching. We want to show you this other picture that we are seeing from, that's on Remote 45, I believe, which is what we understand is the Ministry of Finance in Baghdad, which is on fire. It has been burning for some time now. And apparently this building, if it is the Ministry of Finance, as we are told, contains a number of different offices.
People started to cheer, and the large tank rescue vehicle was wheeling it in, much like a tow truck would wheel in a crashed car. The cheers went up, and finally when it toppled onto the ground, a lot of men rushed forward and jumped on top of the statue, which was a hollow statue, and were jumping up and down and cheering and waving a pre-Gulf War Iraqi flag. Incredible scenes here in central eastern Baghdad. Now, talking, people are dispersing a little bit as night begins to fall, once the statue has come down, but still a lot of people on the streets.
And Simon, you also described us a little bit earlier about the varying reactions American troops have gotten as they've come into Baghdad, and in spite of what Martin Savage described about 45 minutes ago of a major all-out engagement on the campus of Baghdad University, about 2 miles from here, you talked about Iraqi citizens walking up to Marines, handing them yellow flowers, and you actually heard children talking about President Bush. What did they say?
People were cheering, people were saying thank you very much. A few people rushed forward to the military vehicle that I was traveling in and shouted out thank you. Very good. And various reactions along those lines. The trepidation that we've seen over the previous few days being replaced by, if not all-out jubilation, then
Okay, I think we've lost our connection with Simon Robinson of Time Magazine.